Hand loaders, bullet casters, welcome back to my bench. I heard your request. You wanted me to map out my factory crimp die, give case wall thickness measurements, and compare them. Alright, I'm good with that, folks. So what we're going to do here first, we're going to go ahead and take a slug measurement. This cast lead, pure lead round ball will pass through this factory crimp die, and we are going to get a measurement. So folks, here's the Sterret micrometer. Here is our lead slug. Now, it would be a fatal mistake to assume that one measurement is sufficient. So these really need to be measured in 3 separate locations. The brass, when I measure it, I'm going to measure actually in 4 different locations. This is an outside diameter reading, and the brass is going to be a wall thickness reading, so a little bit different, and I'm not going to have you sit here and watch me do every single one, but I will go ahead and let you know that this first measurement here reads 0.472, and what does our vernier scale say? 6.4726. This, my friends, is the tool of the day. This is a Holland's neck thickness micrometer. And if I can remove that glare, you see we got a really nice 0. And what makes this stand out as different is this kind of football shaped bearing surface. Now, we have this perfect surface to help us get the inside of the neck. However, right here we have a very much flat surface. We just simply cannot assume that the outside is flat and true enough that we'll still get a perfect measurement unless we go and do the additional work to make sure that any possible remaining flaring of the case has been removed. We may also need to run it back through, some kind of taper crimp die just enough to make sure 100% that any possible flare has been removed. Now this is the R&P case, the Remington. I'm going to go ahead and take 4 measurements here, and I'll have you watch them with me. I'm going to write them down as I go so I can share the whole thing in the end. But just as an example here, this one is a 0.009, and our vernier scale gives us a, I want to say a 5 as the 4th decimal place. So we'll just quarter it over and be very mindful that your surface you're measuring has been adequately prepared for the job. This is a 0.0095 again. Now we quarter it 3rd time, and we may see some differences here, we may not, but the only way to know is to check. 0.0098. And our last and final measurement on this case is almost 0.0100, but I don't think we're there yet. It's still a 0.0099. So now that we've got a good clean measurement of the inside ring on the factory crimp die, and we've got some really good measurements that I'm pretty excited to share with you on the case wall thicknesses, it's time to actually load some dummy rounds back up with the same brass so that we can take some actual loaded diameter measurements. So here we are. This is the loaded federal round. The the flare has been removed with my Redding taper crimp die, just to make sure that we do not end up with any skewed results. Right now on this federal, we're getting a 0.473, and our veneer scale gives us a 5. So 0.4735 as a first measurement, and we'll rotate it approximately a third, and we end up with 0.474. Then one more rotation, and we get us a 0.73. Five. This should yield us an average measurement of a 0.4736 as a loaded round. So we got all of our information, we've got all our measurements, and I'm pretty happy that y'all asked me to do this because, you know, this is pretty enlightening to what our different cases are like. This also lets us know what the inside diameter of our Lee Factory Crimp die is, which is at 0.4725. Now that's mine. I don't know what yours is like, but I'm sure it's very close. This right here is going to give us our actual loaded diameter minus the factory crimp die. Okay, that's going to equal the swage. That may or may not happen. Some of these will be 0. Some of these will show mathematically where they ought to swage. So let's start over here to the left with these federal cases. We took 4 measurements in different spots. We just kind of quartered the case around and took a measurement with that case wall thickness micrometer. And notice no two here are alike, okay? But this does yield us an average of 0.0108, which we can use this as, you know, our basis to kind of approach this as if 360 degrees around the case. This is our measurement, though we can tell here that is not so. In fact, our extreme spread, which is what this ES stands for, is a 0.0009. Okay, now that is the amount of difference between our highest, which is this 0.0113, all the way to our smallest, which is this 0.0104. Okay, now some of y'all probably didn't realize that there could be that much variation. I mean, this is almost 1/1000th of an inch difference from one end of the case to the other. So based off of the numbers, what we did was we multiplied the average diameter times 2, and then we added the diameter of the standard 45 ACP cast bullet, which is a 0.452. I really wish I had a bigger whiteboard, but I don't, so please bear with me. And when we multiply this by 2, then add the bullet diameter, this gives us a predicted loaded diameter of 0.4736. And interestingly enough, right there on the vise with my micrometer, taking 3 different measurements, we got an average or actual loaded diameter of 0.4736. So our math was 1 for 1 here today, guys. That was great. So what we can do now to see how the tolerances stack, because that's what we're really studying here, is the tolerance stacking effect. We are going to plug in our FCD and minus it from our actual loaded round. And on our fancy little scientific calculator, what we get is 0.0011. For practical useful purposes, we'll just call this a 1,000th of an inch, although it's a smidge higher. And if you recall on my last video, I did not get 1,000th of an inch swaging. What I got was 0.008. Pretty close. Either way, on our standard dial calipers or digital calipers, that's going to read pretty much as 1,000th of an inch. So moving on to this Remington case, we can see here we got some much smaller numbers. Like I said, Remington makes some real thin cases. They work fine. Use them. Just understand that they might, become problematic or split earlier than some of these other makes. So just keep an eye out for that. We ended up with an average diameter of 0.0096. Okay, and our extreme spread here was actually pretty good. I mean, it's only a 0.0004. That's not even half 1,000th of an inch in variation from, one point in that 360 degree case mouth to the other. Now, we had predicted, again, multiply the average by 2, add the bullet diameter, and we get a 0.4712. And I was quite pleased to see that, this actually panned out, and our actual loaded diameter was also a 0.4712. Okay, so now we can see here that this is smaller than our factory crimp die inside ring. So how much smaller is it? Well, we've got a little over 1,000th of an inch of room to work with. So, with the standard 452 diameter bullet and this Remington case here, you're just not going to really see any swaging at all. So let's pick up here on the Starline case. Okay, so again, 4 different points of measurement, and this gives us an average of 0.0103. And we've got a pretty good spread. I mean, that's hardly anything at all right there. An extreme spread of 0.003, which is 3/10/1000ths of an inch. So I would say this case in particular, I don't know how all the other Starlines are, because this is the only one I've really taken the time to scrutinize. But if this is a representation, then I'm saying, hey, I like, Starline's consistency. Does it amount to anything in accuracy? I don't know. It'd be worthwhile to find out. But this gives us a predicted loaded diameter of 0.4726. However, whenever I did the measurement, the actual loaded diameter is 0.4724. So somehow 2/10/1000ths of an inch. I missed the boat. I don't know if it was a measurement thing or if it had something to do with the way, lead reacts when seated, because it is possible to swage lead by seating it into a case, but I think that's kind of doubtful with that die setup that I use. But anyways, some error is bound to be involved, but I think this is a pretty good picture. So our actual loaded diameter, not much, but is smaller than this Lee Factory Crimp die. And how much smaller is it? Well, it's 1,000th of an inch. I'm not really going to put it out there on a calculator. That's pretty quick, simple math. So, we've got a little bit of room to go. Not a whole lot, but some room to go before any kind of swaging might happen. All right. So moving on with our Cellar and Bellet case, again, 4 points of measurement, we get an average case wall thickness of 0.0100. So far, This is a pretty consistent number we see, with the exception of the Remington, which is quite thin, and we have an extreme spread of 6/10/1000ths of an inch, which isn't bad. It's not as good as some that we've seen so far, but it seems like this is pretty much in the normal area. Our predicted loaded diameter was a 0.4720. However, we were 1/10/1000th of an inch off, and possibly in measurement, or who knows how that shook out. I measured many times to make sure stuff was accurate, so I'm just reporting back how we got it, and the honest to goodness actual loaded diameter is a 0.4719. So not much there as far as difference. And note that this 0.4719 certainly is smaller and will pass through this factory crimp die post-sizing ring. And we're going to get, let's see, quick math in my head, that looks like 6/10/1000ths of an inch clearance. So, there's plenty of room to work with a standard .452 bullet. This bullet should not swage in this case going through my factory crimp die. So last but certainly not least here, the Winchester cases I've always found interesting. Like I said, I've seen so many variations and how they react over the years, just through the sizing die, through the seating die. It just seems like some come out thin, some come out thick, some are right in the middle. So there's a lot of variation. I really doubt this is going to match every other piece of Winchester 45 ACP brass that you find. But this particular one here, look, we have this low spot of 0.0090 and this high spot of 0.0116. Quite a big variation. This extreme spread is almost 0.003 of an inch. That's huge. But the cases work fine. I like them. Are they less accurate? I don't know. I haven't paid that much attention. Maybe somebody out there can give some feedback who has checked to see the accuracy of Winchester cases. But this yields us an average of 0.0102 thickness, 360 degrees around the case mouth. So when you see a spread like that, it really makes you understand that there's a little bit more going on than just looking at this as one simple average measurement. Now, one side of this case is super thick. The other is super thin. But regardless, we're treating it the same as the others. This is the average, and that's what we're going to run with. And plugging in the numbers, I had a predicted diameter of 0.4724. However, putting it in my micrometer after I had a loaded round, with the same case, I had an actual loaded diameter of 0.4727. So somehow, some way, my prediction was off by 3/10/1000ths of an inch. Is that human error? Is there something else going on? Does it have anything to do with this extreme spread? I don't know. Maybe I should have measured it more times. But that is what we got. So I'm going with it. And as you can see, it is also a larger number than the inside ring of our factory crimp die. Okay, so whenever we plug in the numbers and do the math, we get a 2/10/1000ths of an inch of a potentially swaged bullet. Now, interestingly, in my last video, I think that's exactly how much of a swage that I had with the Winchester case. So let's go ahead and look at this thing in its entirety. I'm not going to break everything down, but just a note for reference. Okay, look at our averages here. Which one is the thickest? Our Federal is the thickest. Our Starline wasn't too terribly far behind it. And then in third place, we've got our Winchester. In fourth place, Cellar and Billet. And then Remington, is fifth place here. Not really surprised. Which one had the best extreme spread? Which one is the most consistent? Starline here proved to be the most consistently thick case. Again, this is a very small sample. Take it for what it's worth to you. I'm not really surprised though, because I've always had great results with Starline cases, but I'm not balking at any of the other ones here either. But something interesting to note, when we look at this Winchester, its thinnest section is thinner than anything in our Remington measurement. And its thickest measurement, 0.0116, is 3/10/1000 of an inch thicker than anything in our thickest case, which was the Federal. So a lot of interesting stuff here. We can break stuff down here however we want all day long. So was there a swaging problem with any of these? Pretty much Federal is our biggest offender. And we might also see some swaging with this Winchester case. These here, definitely not this Remington, probably not this Starline, and I'm pretty sure not this Seller and Bella either. But guys, these aren't the only players out there. There are a ton of different brass manufacturers. This is a very small example, and what I hope to have done here was satisfy some curiosity and kind of help us to understand the differences in our brass. Truthfully, none of this really amounts to a hill of beans if you're happy with how your loads shoot and you enjoy the brass you're using. But this might open your eyes in some areas. So if you got anything interesting in this subject, feel free to throw it down there in the comments. I would love to hear from you. But in the meantime, just like, subscribe, and we're going to be doing more very soon.